Hi, 8th grade. Welcome to my little home classroom. I wanted to give you a quick instructional video for review for your verbals test, which is tomorrow on Tuesday. It's a very simple test. It's a multiple choice test where there are different examples of verbals in sentences, and you have to identify which type of verbal it is, and then possibly how the verbal is actually being used in the sentence. So I just wanted to give you a quick review of verbals and make sure that you have this in the front part of your brain and that you do well on your test tomorrow. The first type of verbal, remember, is the participle. And participles look like verbs, but they act like adjectives in the sentence. And that's the same thing with all of these words. That's why they're called verbals. They look like verbs and they actually have properties of verbs, but they're not functioning as a verb in the sentence. Wherever they're being used, they are not the main verb of the sentence. So they can be very deceptive because they look like a verb and they act like a verb and they even have properties of a verb, but they're in fact doing something else in that sentence. The more complicated sentences we write, the more complex the sentence is, the more you're going to use things like verbals and verbal phrases. And that's good. When you get into your writing more, you want to be masterful and you want to use complex clauses and sentences that use verbals and verbal phrases because they're more challenging. They do a better job of describing something in fewer words, and they just lend a sophistication to your writing, and that's why you want to be able to use them. You want to know what they are so you can intentionally use them in your writing. So the first one, participles, again, looks like a verb but acts like an adjective. They can be single words or they can be participle phrases. And most of the time participles are used in phrases. So it's the participle itself plus a prepositional phrase, and that creates the participle phrase. Remember, you have two different types of participles. We have present participles, and they all end in ing. And then we have past participles, which end in some past form of a verb and again act like an adjective. So if you had a simple word like running or singing or crying, any of those kinds of words, at first glance you would think, oh, well, that's a verb, but it can easily be used as an adjective. So if we say crying baby or running water, then we're using those words again that end in ing, we're using them to describe a noun. Now, if you wanted to use them in the past form, you would say something like frightened child. And so it's a past form of the word to frighten, but it's not being used as a verb. It's being used to describe the child, a frightened child. So you could add a prepositional phrase after that word and turn it into a participle phrase. So you could say something like the child frightened by its shadow, or frightened by her shadow. By her shadow is a prep phrase that comes after the participle and turns that participle into a participle phrase. If you use the word running, instead of saying, the running water, you could say something like running down the road, the child got lost, something like that, or running down the road, the child was crying for his mother. So you're giving more of a description in the writing, you're giving more description to the reader of exactly where that child was running. Or you can just use it as a single word adjective. But the main thing to remember is that participles look so much like verbs, but they are not functioning like a verb at all. They're functioning like an adjective. So let me turn my handy dandy little board around here. And now I want to review for you gerunds. Okay, so gerunds are the second type of verbal that we talked about. And gerunds always end in ing, which makes them easy, except that you want to make sure that you don't confuse a gerund with a present participle because they both end in ing. But a gerund always ends in ing, and it always functions as a noun in the sentence. So you take a word like running, and instead of using it to describe water, like running water, or using it as a verb, the girl was running down the street, you're going to use it now as an entity. And so you're referring to it as a noun. So you would say, running is my favorite sport, or running is good exercise, where you're actually talking about the act of running, which is a noun. Again, they always end in ing, and they always function as a noun in the sentence. What makes them a little bit tricky too is that you can have nouns in lots and lots of different places in the sentence, and I listed a few of them here. They can be subjects, direct objects, subject complements, positives, object of prep. Anywhere where you can have a single word noun, you can have a gerund. Gerunds can also be in phrases. So again, they can take on a prepositional phrase, which gives you more information about the gerund and describes the gerund. And so it's the single word gerund followed by the prep phrase becomes a gerund phrase. So if you said something like running on the trails is my favorite way to exercise, then you're not just saying running is your favorite way to exercise, but you're getting a lot more specific and saying that trail running is your favorite way to exercise. So it gives information to the reader about the type of running that is your favorite or that you like to do. Again, an example might be, hiking in the mountains always lifts my spirits. So you could just say hiking lifts my spirits. But if you say hiking in the mountains, then that creates a very specific image in the reader's mind, and they get a better idea of what the writer is talking about. So gerunds can be used, again, by themselves, or they can be described by prep phrases, and then they're part of a gerund phrase. Oops, sorry.